So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Sandy McDonald, and I'm the Director of the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. Again, want to welcome you this afternoon. This is our Get Ready workshop, virtual workshop. This is designed for our business community, and we're here to try to walk you through, share information with you, so all of us here in South Florida, specifically Broward County, can get ready. Next slide. A little bit about our office. We're the Office of Economic and Small Business Development on behalf of the county. We are small business focused. We educate aspiring entrepreneurs and do consulting activity to help entrepreneurs, our 31 cities, working with our EDO partners, individuals like the Alliance and others. But we also promote business growth. We are trying to find different ways, multiple ways to aid businesses that are here and expanding as well as growing. And we certainly also attract new business to Broward County. But another one of the things that we do as an office is we are service agency. The county has a small business program. And as an example, we try to make sure everything the county buys, we use certified local small businesses. So that's something you can reach back to us about. We'll tell you more about that, or you can go to our website. But just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of who we are. Next slide. This is our office in a nutshell. Technical assistance. We even have an entrepreneurship program. We work with a specific target population known as unincorporated. We now call it BMSD, Broward Municipal Service District. We have our international trade activity. If you're not familiar with FITSE, Florida International Trade and Cultural Expo, if you don't understand 11 steps to exporting, you need to check with us. We also have incentives based on different programs to attract business. We even do that these days since this office incorporates film development. But we're also about workforce development. We're about jobs. We're about leveraging opportunities to assuring not only small business, but residents, hard to hires, those who are seeking employment have opportunities right here in Broward County. Next slide. But today, the discussion topics today, this is about the Emergency Operations Center. This is about Resilient Broward, Resiliency Broward, I'd like to call it. This is about disaster response. This is about business continuity education. Do you have the necessary plans to prepare yourself as well as your family, inclusive of your business? This is about past lessons learned, and this is about resources for our local business community. This is our Get Ready. And I went through those whole 3 minutes and didn't mention it, but yes, this is our Get Ready as we prepare to go into that season. Comes every year, might not be directly impacting us every year, but absolutely every year, we need to get ready. So with that said, next slide. First presenter today is our friend, is our Regional Emergency Service and Communications, such a long title. This is Mr. Tracy Jackson, our Director of our EOC, and he'll get us started. Tracy.
Good afternoon, Sandy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Outstanding. First, let me apologize. It's Take Your Kids to Work Day over here at the EOC, so you may be hearing some special guest stars occasionally. Hope that doesn't bother anyone. Standby one. Are you guys going to handle slides for me then?
Yes, we are ready to go. I can advance now.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Resilient. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Here's a definition for you. The ability of something to bounce back, return to the original, right? After it's been pushed, pulled, etc. Next slide. There's an example of it, right? We're all familiar with this. I personally have a lot of experience with these things, and I terrorize my teachers and sisters and everybody with them. But it's a great thing because you pull it, you stretch it, you send it flying, and it comes back to the original shape. But for our purposes as business owners and as professionals, we're going to reconsider this. Next slide. I want to give you another definition: the ability to become strong, healthy, or successful again after something bad happens. I'm underlining that word again, right? A shorthand is advancing despite adversity. This is a good everyday practice. To do this, you have to be goal-oriented and proactive. Also need to totally emphasize, this is not a single journey. We are stronger together. So your connection with our Office of Economic and Small Business Development and the resources that you bring to the table is an amazing first step in allowing you to advance despite adversity. You need to plan and expect that adversity is going to happen. Here in Broward County, just to give you a short list of things we've encountered over the past 5 years, 2 FBI shootings, an explosion at a local retail establishment in a mall. We've had a 100-year flood and a 1 in 1,000-year flood, and 2, 3 near misses by very powerful hurricanes, a water leak that took 500,000 people offline, and a few more things. So you can't be prepared for everything, but you should be prepared for everything. You have to have a plan to be able to take your business and your home forward when adversity comes. Next slide. This is a picture of somebody who's parachuting. His first parachute did not work. They are mandated by their industry to have a reserve chute. I think it's terrifying that you have to have 2 parachutes when you jump. Kind of says something about the danger level. But the point of this image is they have a plan for adversity. What's your plan? Also, what is your attitude? Because if some part of your plan doesn't work, you have to be able to respond and figure out a way forward. Having the right people around you, having the correct insurances, having your equipment and procedures and staff information in multiple locations backed up. These are all things that are going to be helpful to you when adversity strikes. Mike Tyson famously said that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, so to speak. What is your plan? How are you going to respond to that? You're the subject matter expert. I encourage you to use the tools and talent and connections that you can get through this organization and others to develop something that's going to keep you, your family, and your business safe. Next slide, please. Preparation is key. Now, this slide was in here before the events that we recently held, but the point here that we're trying to make is you got to have a plan and you have to be able to put it into action. You can't forget that you have a plan, because if you do, when things go down, like you see these guys stranded on this rock, they had a plan, but they weren't prepared to put it into action at the first sign of trouble. What is your plan to activate your plan? You need to be ready to immediately go to action mode to preserve your business and your property. Next slide, please. Shorthand. You prepare for adversity so that you can respond in a timely fashion, so that you can recover any ground you lost, right? Advancing despite adversity. Preparation's everything. The EOC prepares by different types of training, practicing, planning, documenting, discussion. We do all this in between emergencies so that when they come, we're prepared to respond. And we in Broward County are depending on you to be prepared. Without your businesses, the country, our society can't sustain itself, particularly those of us who work in government. So we need you to be as prepared as you possibly can, and we need you to be successful. And Sandy and his team have that as a primary goal in their minds. Next slide, please. I call this this is what we're fighting for slide. This is a nice, beautiful day here in South Florida, out in the Everglades. And I use that as a reminder to remind you that everything can look good and great and beautiful one day and very, very different 10 or 11 hours from today. So in closing, I really want you to take seriously the responsibility that you have as professionals, as business owners, to leverage the opportunities that Sandy and the team bring forward, to take advantage of the connections and the tools that are provided, and to make sure that you're prepared and that you've made yourself and your team as resilient as you possibly can. Sandy, I'm done there. I'm happy to take any questions or turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tracy, and we really appreciate that and a little bit of that information base. Yes, definitely, if you're listening to us, go to the chat and make sure you give us your name and your company. We want you to give us just a shout out, but also Q&A. We're going to do Q&A at the end after all of our presenters, But if you have any questions, stick them in the Q&A. I do recognize some of my presenters might not be around at the end, but again, if you put those questions in the Q&A, we'll not only get to them, if you got some early, we can also make sure that our presenters can actually respond before we get to the end. But collectively, we will be doing Q&A at the end. So use the Q&A if you have a question. You want that shout out to be a part of your networking, do that in the chat. So with that, we'll move on. And if Jennifer's here, Dr. Jurado is our Chief Resilience Officer and the Deputy Director of the Resilient Environment Department here at Broward County, and she would be up next.
Sandy, we've been advised that Dr. Jurado is in a meeting, so we can move forward to ESF 18 and then circle back to her when she arrives.
Well, then let's certainly do that. And I think that'll be me and Mike. Next slide. ESF 18, the emergency service function, is about business and industry. But what you're looking at is the Broward County Broward Emergency Response Team. We're called BERT for short. This is our org chart. And it starts all the way at the top with the executive policy group, which is inclusive of the county administrator, then the unified command for all the regional emergency activities and the Broward Emergency Management Team. And then it breaks down into all the ESFs and our community partners, planning section, logistics sections, finance and administration. Understand, all of this, as Tracy just stated, kicks into gear when we're getting ready, and it certainly kicks into gear if based on any proposed incident, we go into activation mode. Next slide. This is specifically our role and responsibility as ESF 18. We have the operations section chief, the infrastructure branch director, ESF 18 supervisor, which is myself. Then we also deal with our hotel and hospitality and the business response recovery. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that business response recovery. Next slide. So for the ESF, and you can read this, it's really about planning and coordinating and assisting in the recovery. But guys and girls, it's about planning and coordinating and the assisting in the recovery before storm, during, and after. We assist in the coordination of the preparation response, which is key. We don't want to wait till an incident or coming out of an incident to start deciding how we plan to support the recovery coming out. Next slide. It's important to realize that we are liaisons for major commercial industry, business, supermarket chains, grocery stores, the banks, financial institutions, and others. And we try to ensure that businesses and industries have access to information, have access to us, have access to other partners, have access to information that can aid them. Because some of them, as you can imagine, when we start talking about the gas stations, the financial institutions, and the grocery stores, we need some of them to recover as soon as possible in order to be the supports that's going to be needed by the business and the residential community to truly recover. Next slide. It's also important to know that the ideal about coordinating with partners to provide business damage impact, you're going to hear from some of our partners later. We just had the incident with the rains and the flood. This is about coordinating efforts, starting with a business damage assessment survey so that we can understand, so that the state can understand what has taken place so that they can begin to assess how they can support us financially through bridge loans or other means or other methods. So again, we request activation from the Florida Small Business Bridge Loan, but that's based on the information we need to get initially from the actual business damage assessment survey. And if you were a part of what we just went through a few weeks ago, you heard us screaming, please complete the survey. Then you eventually heard us screaming and sharing that the bridge loan has been activated. Next slide. And again, our job is to ensure that business and industries have access to timely information. That's the key. We want to make sure as soon as we know, you know. And based on you knowing allows you then to go into action to do what you need to do. We coordinate a countywide virtual business recovery most recently, the last few years coming out of COVID. The business recovery going forward, not necessarily this year, will probably start being physical locations again. Next slide. But do understand a big part of our job as an office for preparation with our municipalities and with the county facilities like the libraries is to establish the business recovery centers. These would be the locations that would be all clear, that would be dry, that would have power, that would aid businesses who still might be hampered in their immediate area, but they got access to move to come to a recovery center that we would have established to allow them to begin to reestablish their business. So we try to work within our municipalities and county facilities to establish business recovery centers prior to going into a season. Again, we'll probably be announcing pretty soon that the BRCs for this year will probably also be virtual. That's an announcement you would get, but it will explain how you would have access to us, we would have access to you, and how online we would want to get you all that necessary information. But I do believe next year, unless something else changes, we'll be going back to having physical structures as our BRC. Next slide. And again, that's just the specific objectives to what we described in terms of trying to offer the release, to assess the needs, to grant throughout the municipalities opportunities and location for folks to come and to begin reestablishing their business, and to provide assistance to the municipalities in identifying short-term and long-term needs. It's not just a business recovery where we certainly want to make sure that you have access to a place for information, but it's also the coordinated effort based on that information, working with our municipalities to get this out to as many businesses as possible. Again, no one group or organization is ever going to be able to do it all. But collectively, guys, we could try to find a way to make sure information is disseminated to the over 77,000 registered businesses in Broward County. Next slide. The virtual business recovery we already described is just the idea that virtually, we still can make sure we push out information like we just did. We pushed out information about the damage assessment. We pushed out information about locations and support that was provided to us right after this rain by DEO, Career Source, SBDC, and others. We shared that with you over the course of 3 or 4 days. Then once we got the announcement from the state, we told you that the bridge loan was actually activated. Again, guys, we did all of that virtually. So technically, that's a good snapshot and example of what we would do under the business recovery centers, even if we had to do it all virtually. Next slide. So with that, that's our contact information. That's my office information. And again, later on, you'll see a slide that will give you more of our email information. But that's who we are as the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, as a part of the entire Broward Emergency Response Team. We're responsible for ESF 18, which is really about business and industry recovery. Next slide.
Sandy, we have Dr. Jurado now.
Okay, so then let's go back, Vanetta, to her slides. He is our Chief Resilience Officer, also the Deputy Director of the Resilient Environment Department here in Broward County. Dr. Jurado, take it over, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandy, and I apologize for arriving a little bit tardy. We have a climate change task force meeting today that got rescheduled, so I apologize for the conflict. Really glad to support the conversation. I think that there's probably a number of things that we could talk about in terms of, you know, like post-disaster assessments and so forth, but what I really want to maybe articulate is the fact that there's a lot that we are working to address in advance of storms and flooding and related impacts, that we are interested in ensuring that everybody has the ability to think about their investments, their residence, their place of work, the infrastructure that connects the two of those, and that we start to view our risks, not only from individual and personal risk to kind of the community-based assessments and how we can work better together, public and private sector, to evaluate and address risk to reduce exposures, reduce losses, reduce economic and service disruptions. And I just want to share that there is a lot that's already underway as we think about our exposures as a community, especially relating to climate change, sea level rise, rainfall intensification. Certainly, we've had a lot of recent exposures that highlights for us our vulnerabilities as a community and where we need to make investments. So whether it was the most recent flood event or whether it was events that we've experienced with Tropical Storm Eta or other, rainfall surge, sea level rise impacts, there's a lot that we can do to prepare proactively about these evolving conditions. So many of you may not be as intimately familiar with our sea level rise projections as some of us in the planning environment, but I just do want to share that we are planning for sea level rise in accordance with the sea level rise projection that's shown here. This is embedded in the way that we think about our infrastructure, but it's also really critical that we think about what does this mean when we have an impact that affects other infrastructure that we care about, and how do we need to start looking at kind of, redesign. So we're planning for 3.3 feet of sea level rise by 2070. Most of our planning tools already account for 2 feet of sea level rise, consistent with our previous sea level rise projections. And this is embedded in our design requirements for drainage systems, for finished floor elevations, for seawall top elevations, for coastal, berms to, tidal disruptions. But it's also starting to be coupled with rainfall projections that when we think about all of these things combined, what type of infrastructure, say pumps, dry retention, wet retention, various redevelopment strategies, can we all put into place to help manage water better? The combination of sea level rise, rainfall, groundwater table rise affects our flood severity. I think we've all appreciated that we might have witnessed events that we've never seen before. Rainfall delivery, the extent, duration, expanse, depth of flooding. We have seen service disruptions that we might have only historically associated with a tropical storm can now happen with rainfall that's occurring during our dry season. So we really need to kind of reevaluate what are our exposures in our community, and I think take stock of these recent events, either whether personal or observed, to consider, what do we do next time to not have to experience that again? And clearly economic quality of life implications that affect us as a community in the immediate as well as, long-term, in terms of what does it look like if we're trying to do business under these types of conditions in the future, and how do we, set ourselves up for a better economic circumstance. Next slide, please. Just highlighting for those who haven't, maybe didn't witness some of this firsthand, but again, playing out very strongly in events like we just realized, whether it's, the rainfall event from 2 weeks ago with 26 inches of rainfall in 7 hours, whether it's Tropical Storm Eta, which was 35, inches over a period of maybe 3 days. We know that these can be very significant, but there's a lot of lesser storm events as well that under a variety of conditions, such as, 8 inches of rainfall with a high tide, could produce nearly the same level of flooding with another 10, 15 years of sea level rise. So we're really trying to think about what do these compound conditions look like? How can we in local government organize investments in a better way to support continuity of services in the community? But at the same time, what are things that we can do at a building level site, both public and private, to help harden our own infrastructure against the impacts as well? Next slide, please. And so we're currently in the throes of planning for a community-wide resilient strategy that brings together all of these, what we call compound flood factors. This is important because as we finalize the modeling of potential exposures, we're going to be working to develop the adaptation plan that supports risk reduction. And we'll be doing this on 50-acre sub-basins across the entire county. We are working most directly with the municipalities, their planners, the water control districts, and water managers to help inform where do we know there to be areas of risk, where do we need adaptation deployed, what might that look like. When we finalize these results, this information, including the risk scenarios under the various conditions and the adaptation improvements alongside the anticipated flood reduction benefit, that's going to be all available online. So it allows you as business owners or entities operating in the environment to have a better idea of what that risk looks like, how it relates to assets of interest to you. And there may be partnership opportunities, and it'll be very critical to communicate, coordinate with municipalities on what type of plans are underway. There's a lot of funding that's available today to support adaptation planning. And there's a lot of opportunity to partner to try and accelerate projects of interest. And we've certainly done that at the level of Broward County. We've worked with the Hollywood CRA, the City of Hollywood on some joint projects, but there are projects taking place within communities at the airport. And while private sector is not directly eligible for those funds, there are priority projects that you can help bring to light, needs that you can bring to light that could be fundable potentially through the municipality's actions that could directly benefit an area where flood improvements are needed while you're, again, working to address resilience as part of your individual asset. So we know that we're best informed by those who are in the community and helping to bring these needs to light. Next slide, please. So as we work to develop a countywide program, these are the types of results that will be available for viewing at the community level. Individuals will be able to hone in on sites of interest within their community to get a better understanding of pre and post project risk. And again, that work is all underway, but it's very high resolution, and it's the type of information I think that we all need to be informed of. This is far beyond what FEMA evaluates as risk on a day-to-day basis, but rather is taking us into the coming decades and allowing us to be much more strategic as a community about our exposures and investments. Next slide, please. And so, again, I want to bring to everyone's attention the funding opportunities that exist, right now. We've had funding made available through the state of Florida the last 2 years at $500 million a year. Broward community was successful in bringing in about 25% of the total state funds to resilience and adaptation improvements in our region, whether it was county or municipal projects. Just last year, we also did well the year before that. Broward County community itself, we need to continue to be successful in these requests. We have a lot of information to help inform where we have infrastructure needs. Again, working with the cities, we can help identify where these priorities exist. Certainly the county is pursuing the funding as well. So I would just urge that that those conversations take place, that we be proactive at city and local, at the very local level to help organize where we want to see these funds deployed. The funding is providing for 50% cost share in these capital projects, also supporting planning grants. And this next grant period opens in July. It concludes in September. We certainly have a lot to derive from this last several weeks to help inform these requests, and shouldn't, it's obviously negative exposures with every event, but we learn a lot and we can use that to our advantage in informing infrastructure requests and bringing those dollars back to our community to help harden our resilience. So with that, I will conclude. I think that's my last slide. I stand ready to serve as a resource for anyone who's looking for information to help with their inquiries of personal exposures through the modeling that we're doing, help link individuals with resources and share information to aid in our collective planning. I'll just note in final conclusion that the countywide action plan is expected to be completed with the organized kind of portfolio of adaptation improvements in about 12 months. At that time, we expect to be preparing advancement of a very organized plan rather than just kind of, we know it's flooding here today, what can I do now? And we look forward to receiving a strong support as we seek to advance this more organized plan for the resilience of Broward County countywide. Thank you.
Dr. Jurado, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that information. And for everyone, our slides will be made available and placed on our website in our office no later than Monday of next week. Because again, this information we do each year. We try to do it differently each year because we understand the importance of getting ready. And we just want to make sure that you and the other businesses in the community have access to this information. So with that, thank you again, Dr. Jurado. Timothy Bryant, our representative and our true community partner with Florida Power and Light Company. He's the director of external affairs and someone I've gotten to know over the years and really appreciate what they do, not only during the season, year round, and the community partnership that they actually offer all of us. And as a business community, if you don't know, and we won't go into it today, there's things even on the economic development side that FPL does to support the business community, startup community, expanding in existing communities. So that's another story. But Tim's going to share with us today exactly the other things that they do to make sure that we're ready. They do to make sure we're ready. I love saying that. They do to make sure we're ready to welcome the season. Thank you, Tim. Take it over, sir.
Thank you, Sandy, for those great words. And again, next slide, please. Again, Timothy Bryant, Director of External Affairs for the Broward and Southwest Florida region for Florida Power and Light Company. I'm going to share with you all a brief overview of how we respond to storms and how we've done so throughout the years. Next slide, please. Brief table of contents. We're going to go over that overview of the company, 2022 recap of our storm season, how we invest in a stronger and more resilient grid, how we prepare, communicate, and restore power after the fact. Next slide, please. So FPL is the largest energy company here in the United States, quite honestly, and clearly the largest in the state of Florida. We have about 10 million customers on about 5.8 million accounts spanning from Pensacola to Miami-Dade. Again, you can see our numbers there on the slide. Next slide, please. And again, continue, please. Continuing on, I want to share a little bit about 2022 storm season. Again, 14 named storms in 2022, and 3 of those having direct impact to us here in Florida. Tropical Storm Alex started the year off fresh, but then we had quite a bit of a lull throughout the summer. And then, of course, Hurricanes Ian and Nicole helped round out the year in a dramatic fashion. Next slide, please. So again, Hurricane Ian was one of our most powerful storms to ever make landfall in the state of Florida. It came in as a strong Category 4 major hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds. And along with that significant storm surge that affected over 2 million customers, primarily in the southwest area of our territory, but quite honestly, a huge impact to our entire state. Ian was the 5th strongest storm to make landfall, again, and the 4th strongest storm to make landfall here in Florida. And as you can see from the slide, for those of you who were around in 2004 to experience Hurricane Charlie, the size of Ian completely dwarfs Hurricane Charlie. Hurricane Charlie could literally sit in the eye, or it's literally could sit in the eye of Hurricane Ian. You can see that visual there, the 2 eyes of the 2 storms. And again, Charlie literally sitting itself completely within the eye of Ian. Next slide, please. So as we dealt with Hurricane Ian, shortly thereafter, about 6 weeks, Hurricane Nicole made landfall on the East Coast near Vero Beach as a Category 1 hurricane. Again, it was the latest storm to make landfall in the Florida East Coast. And again, we actually had 3 storms formed in November, tied for the most ever. Next slide. So as we look at the various investments that FPL has made throughout our time servicing our customers, we like taking a look back. So if you can take a look at this chart in the upper left, you can see a lot of different things I want to really point out and bring to your attention. Specifically, Hurricane Charlie's on the far left column. Then we have Wilma, Hurricane Irma, Ian, and then Hurricane Nicole. And again, as I referenced Charlie before, Charlie was a Category 4 hurricane, 150-mile-an-hour wind. And you can see generally it took up on average about 3.5 days to restore all of customers. But the real pain point was about 10 days for 95% of our customers to restore Charlie back in 2004. Fast forward to Hurricane Ian. Again, we had our average customer outage was about 1.5 days. And again, we had 95% of our customers restored inside of 6 days. So again, a huge turnaround. And we believe that is due to all the significant hardening that we performed over the years after learning all the different challenges from whether it was Hurricanes Charlie, Wilma, and clearly Irma that came before it to help us get more resilient and more reliable for all of our customers. Next slide, please. And continue. So as I mentioned, we at FPL have made significant investments to build a stronger and more resilient energy system. And to that end, 72% of our main power lines are either hardened or underground, with 94% of our transmission structures now being steel or concrete. And again, we have a continuous year-long or year-round tree trimming and pole inspection program. And I would say that 94% steel or concrete structure statistic is really a little bit misleading, because for those of you who do not know, we acquired the Gulf Power Company about 3 years ago up in the Panhandle. So here in Peninsular Florida, we have replaced 100% of all of our transmission structures with either steel or concrete. And now it's just those transmission structures in the Panhandle that we're working through now. That balance of that 6% is really evidenced by those structures in the Panhandle. But here in Peninsular Florida, all of our transmission structures are now either steel or concrete. And that's one of the major areas of resiliency and strengthening that we are very, very proud of. Next slide, please. So that hardening definitely helps, as you can see, in the midst of a hurricane and other major storm events. But we also are very proud of what we do every day to drive reliability, even in blue sky conditions. Over the last decade, our reliability has improved over 40%, and that's being done by the technology that we've deployed, and a lot of, again, the lessons learned that we have deployed after having dealt with some challenges over the years. Next slide. In addition to improving our day-to-day reliability by that 40%, we've also continued to deploy technology to help us in those storm conditions, such as the first over the horizon drone, FPL Air 1, which is a fixed wing drone that we deployed in response to Hurricane Ian that we're very proud of. And that helps us look over the horizon to assess damage along our major transmission infrastructure and other extensive areas, so we can better plan our restoration. And even locally, as you can see in the photo to the left, we have local level drones that we deploy. Our drone in a box, as we call it, that allows our restoration teams to fly that drone locally and within eyesight to span and investigate, rather, our lines in the local community to understand better how we can respond and restore those lines more quickly. And this drone in a box is also used in day-to-day activities as we have sporadic issues with tree trimming and identifying the strategy to go about trimming more challenging areas. But we can fly the drone without putting people in harm's way, and quite honestly, being a lot more efficient and effective with planning our work. Next slide. At our corporate headquarters in Juno Beach, Florida, we have deployed the FPL Command Center and Distribution Control Center. The center itself actually sits just to the west in the city of West Palm Beach. It's a hardened facility that can withstand a Category 5 storm. We deployed there all of our command and control infrastructure and team members to run 24/7 operations to restore after a storm or any other major event. Again, we have the capacity for over 100 storm riders to be able to quickly and safely restore as soon as possible in response to a storm. Next slide. And next slide. So to that end, again, with leveraging our folks in the control center, we also continue to leverage all the proven plans and lessons learned that we've garnered throughout the years. So that includes year-round preparations, our annual storm drill that we just held last week, where we simulate actual categories and how they may impact the state of Florida or other places and ultimately impact our teams and our ability to respond. And in doing that week-long drill, we work across our entire teams as well as with local partners to simulate storms and how we would all work together to respond and restore power in the midst of a given storm situation. And it's varying scenarios that we run. Next slide, please. We work with our communities. We work directly with our communities to identify all of our critical infrastructure. FPL, we work with governments to ensure that we're restoring our infrastructure in the priority in which that they want, especially making sure that we restore those areas that provide essential services such as grocery stores and gas stations first. And that way we also work to ensure that hospitals, 911 centers, all those critical infrastructure needs are met. Next slide. So again, preparing now before the storm. Again, we launch an annual campaign yearly to make sure that we're communicating to all of our customers to exercise their storm plan, to make sure that they're preparing well before the beginning of the season, beginning on June 1, to have a plan in place, as well as refining that plan throughout the year as it relates to managing your business and your family challenges and responsibilities. Next slide. Next slide. On our website, fpl.com/storm, you can find tons of information for not only your personal residential and or customer accounts, but tons of other information for you to prepare for storms, as well as, again, blue sky conditions to help you prepare before the storm. And if there is an outage in the midst of a storm, further details about how to report those as well. Next slide. And again, during storms, we work with our media team to leverage over 30 channels to communicate with our customers and partners. Again, things such as your traditional media, social media, email, automated phone calls and websites, all of those tools to better communicate our restoration plans and estimated time of restoration and all other issues of concern for our customers across multiple channels. Next slide, please. And next slide. So again, our processes remain unchanged. Again, we do all of our restoration with safety first. And again, we work to not only continue to work safely, but we want to restore the greatest number of customers as safely and quickly as possible. And along with that, as I mentioned before, prioritizing those critical areas such as, again, those critical power lines serving our police stations, fire stations, water treatment plants, hospitals, 911 centers, as well as our pharmacies and gas stations and all those other needed community services. Next slide. And just for a little bit more detail, again, we start our restoration over 96 hours before landfall. So as we see a storm coming over the horizon, we activate our storm team and we work to begin analyzing our damage and predicting where damage will be in order to better mitigate our response and also communicate to our customers and stakeholders as we chart out our plan. Next slide. Along with that, in planning, we also have over 100 staging sites where we bring in crews from all over the country through our mutual assistance programs and staging sites and mobile command centers and vehicle fleets to help us restore as quickly as possible based on our forecast of the track of the storm and how we will best restore customers. Next slide. And again, FPL, we work 24/7, again, during storms and blue sky conditions to ensure that our customers are online as quickly and safely as we possibly can. And I think that is my last slide. Thank you all.
And Mr. Bryan, we want to thank you again for sharing that information, and always, again, seriously being a partner of Broward, a partner of the state, and certainly making sure that our business community is aware of the access, the opportunities, as well as the get ready that FPL does for each year. So thank you kindly.
My pleasure.
Next gang, we're going to have the Associate Director of Education and Outreach from FIU, Eric Salno, who's going to come and share information. Eric, I want to thank you for joining us this year, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share the information with our business community.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that, and a pleasure to be here very much. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So again, there's some of my contact information, and if you'd like to follow us, there's our social media as well at the FIU Extreme Events Institute, where we focused on hurricane research. Next slide. I do want to mention right off the top that we do have a collaboration with the National Hurricane Center. It's a Spanish hurricane language website, huracanes.fiu.edu. So it's a great additional resource for hurricane information in Spanish. Next slide. I attended a couple of hurricane conferences in the last couple of weeks. Just a few points to be made. There's the cone for Ian. Some of the comments made from the National Hurricane Center is, don't focus on the cone and do not focus on that skinny black line in the center. Focus on the watches and the warnings. All right, and stop looking at the spaghetti models, because National Hurricane Center is doing that. So let them do their job, and they're the best in the world. Next slide. What we want to focus on are the hazards. So put the cone aside and look at the hazards that are expected here in South Florida and Broward County. This is what's most important for us, especially those watches and warnings. Next slide. Storm surge watch and warning, still rather new for all of us in terms of terminology. This started several years ago. We've always had hurricane watch and warning, but storm surge watch and warning, very important for us to pay attention to. So if we're under a storm surge watch or warning, National Hurricane Center says they don't fool around with this. They mean it. So if these are issued, expect storm surge and then certainly respond accordingly. Next slide. So we all know what that means. Broward County, we all need to know our zone. What's our evacuation zone? Are we in an evacuation zone? And what's our plan going to be if we're going to evacuate? Next slide. Some of the, in addition to the National Hurricane Center graphics, when it comes to hazards, another website you should put as your favorite is National Weather Service Miami. They're the best for local information in terms of graphics. Next slide. So wanting to know how that storm is going to affect us specifically, National Weather Service Miami will have these specific graphics. Media does a great job as well, but I want to remind everyone, National Weather Service has the specific information that we need to know. Next slide. And we just had this unfortunate flooding rain event in Fort Lauderdale. We all know a few weeks ago, and we know this is a business preparedness. And so some seminar and some open-ended questions that is kind of the theme of all the speakers. And I know the speakers that are going to follow me as well, but was your business affected? And were your employees affected? Next slide. So flood insurance, do you have it? Do you need it? Are you required to have it? My personal opinion, it can flood anywhere in Florida, any day, any month of the year. So if your budget can afford flood insurance, certainly make sure you have it. Next slide. So in terms of our research at FIU and the Extreme Events Institute, if you haven't heard about our wall of wind, we can create up to Category 5 hurricane conditions, and we test structures. And the next slide will be a video, and we're going to watch the short video.
Dr. Sauna, it doesn't appear that the video is going to play for us today. We might have to play it in the playback.
Here, click on the screen itself. There you go, right there. And then go back to the arrow. Try that.
If you have maybe the link and can put it into the chat, maybe that might work as well.
Sure, we can do that afterwards. The video is just going to be an overview of what the wall of wind does, the type of testing that we do on buildings, roofs, windows, walls, doors. And again, up to Category 5 hurricane conditions, we're part of the National Science Foundation NHIRI Natural Hazard Network. So we do wind engineering projects all year long on trying to make the built environment more resilient. Okay, next slide. Thank you. And I do want to briefly mention that we are going to make an even stronger research facility. This is about 5 to 7 years away, but work is now in the planning phase to develop a facility that'll go beyond 157 miles per hour that we do today, that we're going to go to 200 miles an hour. And look at that. The vision, the concept is to put a wave tank in front of the structure so we can not only incorporate the wind forces, but now also wave action and storm surge. So we'll keep everyone up to date of our progress of this incredible facility in the coming years. Next slide. So when it comes to our resilience work, it's all about mitigation, and we know there's different ways we can do that in strengthening our businesses and homes. When it comes to garage doors, our biggest opening to make sure you have a up-to-date code-approved garage door. Next slide. And again, how are we going to protect our window openings? Plywood is still widely used, but certainly metal shutters and hurricane-resistant glass is our products that can be very strong, and that's the direction we want everyone to head. And next slide. And look at this, tape. Tape does nothing. We used to all do it, but that was old education. Now we have new education. And unfortunately, still some people are using tape. So we do not want to see tape on businesses on their big windows with any storm approaching, because it's a waste of time. Next slide. So for all of us, whether it's a business or home and you want to get a scorecard for what it is you can do to improve your wind resilience to a hurricane, you can get a wind mitigation inspection and get that scorecard and then determine the costs. And then with that budget, a timeline to now then strengthen older business structures or even older homes. Next slide. So business disaster preparedness. Do you know when your plan activates? Next slide. And some of this may be part of what the following speakers are going to mention. So I'll just kind of summarize. We have now, used to be 3-day cones, now they're 5-day cones. Next slide. So just one way to possibly set up your plan is once we get into the cone, start that to-do list. So you don't do everything in one day, but you spread that to-do list so long as we stay in the cone. Next slide. So 3 days to landfall. Next slide. So that would mean at that point, what are you going to do when we're 3 days out? And then when we're 2 days out? And then when we're 1 day out? So as long as we're under the threat condition, then that's how you can kind of spread your to-do list. Next slide. So some open-ended questions. Have you and your management team reviewed your disaster plan? Do you know who's been classified as an essential or non-essential employee? Do you know what work responsibilities need to be done by everyone? All this to avoid conflict. And if there's been employee turnover, you want them to make sure they know what the plan is. Next slide. We all know communication, power, damage, returning to work, homeless, if part of your staff becomes homeless because of an event, all of these things need to be in your plan. Next slide. So are you going to be able to pay the employees after an event? How will you communicate with them? And how about your vendor contracts? Have they been updated for this hurricane season? Next slide. And I also say be sensitive and compassionate with everyone on your team, especially if they've been severely affected by that event. For example, a couple of weeks ago with our big flooding event. So there's lots of things to address, and especially afterwards, and have that level of compassion. Next slide. I just wanted to promote a big event coming up at the Museum of Discovery and Science on Saturday, May 20th, Eye of the Storm. All of this content is going to be presented there in a fun way at the museum, and we're directly involved with Broward County Emergency Management, City of Fort Lauderdale Emergency Management, all the communities in Broward County. So come on out, bring your families, but it's all to learn about hurricanes. Next slide. And during COVID, we developed a really cool 12-part hurricane video series that talks about all these topics as well. Next slide. So there you go. I wrap it up, and I thank you very much for your time.
Dr. Saldana, thank you. That was great information, quite informative, and certainly we're going to make sure if we get that link on the video, we'll certainly stick that in our chat, and with your permission, we'll even stick that out on our website to make sure folks has access and have an understanding of exactly the type of innovation and the way you guys are taking a look at what these storms can actually do and how you're preparing us. So thank you for that. Our next presenter, no stranger to me, and he should not be a stranger to you guys. On behalf of Florida SBDC at FAU, Rafael Cruz, I have known my entire 10 years being here in Broward, certainly a partner of ours, and certainly a strong community partner and advocate in so many ways. Rafael, take it over, sir.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Glad to be here and following all these great people providing information and resources. I'm going to speak directly to business owners, okay? And next slide, please. Speak directly to the business owners. Okay, next slide. And next slide. I'm going to go through some of the stuff because some things have been mentioned, right? Basically, the question you should be asking yourself is, when something happens, can we bounce back? And resiliency was already explained. So can you bounce back from it? That's really the issue, right? So I know we've been talking about, or you've heard a lot about, planning and so on and so forth. The plan doesn't have to be a 50-page plan. The shorter the plan, actually, the better, because people remember a shorter plan, right? So next slide, please. Okay, this is just about something about impact. If you lived here in Florida for a little while, you know that impact is an issue. So the main things you need to worry about are water, okay, wind, electricity, and already FPL talked about the great job they do, but how long can you go without electricity? Okay, so that's an issue, right? So things like that. That you have to think about in your planning, right? Next slide, please. Main thing on this slide is, says only 6% of companies that see a catastrophic data loss, right, that will survive. 43% of those never reopen, and 51% close within 2 years, okay? Now, it's not just the physical stuff that you can lose, it's your data. So when we talk about your planning, we're not only talking about the people and the buildings and things like that, but it's your data. What happens to that data? Where does it go? All right, how do you have it backed up and so on? Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is a key thing that I want all of you business owners to really focus on. Right? Why are we honing in on this so much? Okay, it's because planning for a disaster actually becomes a competitive advantage for you. So if you're going to get a client, okay, a customer, major customer, or you're going to get a government contract, and you can demonstrate that you have an active, okay, plan in place. So when something happens, I am, as a client or a customer, am much more comfortable working with you who are prepared than working with a company that provides the same services or the same products and is not prepared, right? And I personally feel, this is me personally feeling, that many of the agencies, government agencies that now provide contracts, okay, to the private sector will eventually require, it will require as part of, okay, your application process that you have some type of disaster planning in place. So if you get ahead of this, this becomes a competitive advantage. You become known as a company that already does this, and this is part of your culture, okay? So that's an important thing to consider, because you may be, business people are always doing this, right? It's time, it costs money, it's this, that, and yeah, time is money. Should we really invest in this? Do we really need it? Well, this is the business reason for doing it, okay? Competitive advantage helps you win business out there in the marketplace, all right? So that's something that you want to consider as you start to think about this disaster preparedness and the planning that you need to go through to prepare yourself. Next slide. Now, here's some simple questions, all right? And you want to think about, based on what FPL said, okay, they're trying to get electricity up as fast as possible. So you need to figure out from 0 to 24 hours, then 24 to 48 hours, and then 48 to 72 hours, what can we do and what do we have to do? And what should we be doing, right? So a simple thing in your plan is who calls who to let know that they're okay, right? If you have 5 people on your team, each person is responsible for calling 2 others. They can memorize that. They don't need to have that written down anywhere, right? Again, a simple plan that you can memorize is a lot easier than a 50-page plan that nobody reads and it gathers dust in somebody's desk, right? But in terms of business operation, okay, how long can you withstand an interruption in critical functions, right? Basically, the inability to sell or manufacture whatever it is that you sell or manufacture, right? So how long can you go without making something, and how long can you go without selling that something, whether it's a service or a product, okay? So your plan should be in these phases: 0 to 24 hours, 24 to 40 hours, 48 to 72 hours, right? At least starting. Next slide, please. The other thing is, every year, and this, I'm throwing out little things that you can start doing tonight, okay? And this is your pre-planning. But if you just did these things that I'm asking you to do, you'd be well along, okay, having, right, a very decent plan, right? So identify the records that are vital, all right, to your organization. Back those records up, both in an external, okay, drive of some kind that's secured, and we have tons of ways to back up things online. Right, get a reputable backup source and back up your critical data online, okay? Right, make multiple copies of things, right? But another thing that you do is what's in red there: maintain photographic records of inventory, furnishings, fixtures, equipment. This is important for insurance and for SBA, right? So before hurricane season, once a year, twice a year, just go around with your phone and videotape everybody, the offices, videotape the plant. Okay, videotape your manufacturing facility. Slow videotape of everything that you have there, names of equipment, things like that, all of it. So then you email that record to yourself, you send it to somebody, okay? And then what happens is, if you get hit and physical damage happens, you have video proof that you did have those things. Because you might lose a receipt for a machine or was bought 10 years ago or something like that can happen. Okay, but this annual recording of your inventory, okay, and your physical environment can be very, very helpful in a post-disaster setting, right? Next slide. Won't get too much into cybersecurity, but it's important to understand that you have to have backup, right, of your critical data, and then your backup needs to be someplace that's secure, that it cannot be broken into easily, okay? Now, one thing that I do mention here, okay, something as simple as just what's called a go bag. Okay, you can go down to the Bass Pro Shop or someplace like that sells marine equipment, and they have these floating plastic, literally they're cases. And once you close them, they're vacuum sealed, right? You can put lots of information in there and data, okay, backed up on a hard drive, lock that in these specialized Ziploc baggies that they have, again, for the boating industry, put them in your go bag, keep that go bag with you. When you go to work, when you leave, when you go to work, when you leave. So you can walk into any one of our business recovery centers post-disaster, open up your little go bag, and you have everything that you need in there to answer any question. Because here's the issue, how would you prove who you are after a hurricane if you've lost everything? And how would you prove that you own what you say you own, right? So you have to establish that, because remember, one thing that guarantee that happens after every disaster is people take advantage of people that have been through the disaster. So we have fraud all over the place. It's sad to say, but it happens. People come out and say they can do your roof, or they can do, oh, we can install this, or we can do that. And they take advantage of folks. So you being able to prove as quickly as possible that you are who you say you are, and you are the owner of what you say you own, that moves it along. And then you can get down to filling out the forms that you need to access any resources available, right? Next slide. Okay, these are some simple steps, okay? Document your damage. After impact, call your insurance agent, okay? File a tax extension if you need one. Again, I just mentioned fraud, so avoid fraud, right? But go with reputable folks. And what you should do is line up people beforehand. If you think you're going to need some kind of service, a roofing service or contracting service, line those people up beforehand. Talk to them before a storm. You take them out to lunch or something like that. But line those folks up beforehand, right? And this happened in the pandemic, all right? A lot of folks lost customers because they didn't let the customers know they were still in business. So a lot of customers thought, oh, wow, I haven't heard from them. They're out of business. Communicate with your customers. So that should be part of your plan. How will you communicate with your customers, and how regularly will you communicate so they can expect to get information from you? Okay, next slide. Right. The bridge loan is going to be discussed later on, so I'm going to let Mason talk about the bridge loan later. But next slide for us. Right. The SBA, once a disaster hits, right, the SBA declares a disaster, right, and then federal dollars are available through a loan or some other means, okay, for businesses and communities that have been affected. This is the only time that the SBA directly loans money. Otherwise, they're not loaning money directly. They provide guarantees to banks normally, but in a disaster, they loan directly, okay? And it's important to understand that they're going to need that information that we discussed before. Next slide, please. All right. I just said this, that it's a direct, okay? It's a direct, right? It's a direct loan from the SBA during only when a disaster, okay? Next slide. Excuse me, two types of loans: of physical damage and economic injury. We went through economic injury. Economic injury is when nothing happens to your building or your offices, but your business is interrupted so you can't make money. That's economic injury. Physical damage is physical damage, okay? So it's usually two types, okay? And these things change every year and every season, so you want to stay on top of them, all right? You can reach out to us, the SBDC, the county, any of the agencies that have spoken to you today. We have access to this information. We're all here to help you, right? Next slide. Again, here are some resources for the Florida Small Business Development Center, the Florida SBDC. That's our statewide site. Florida Bridge Loan, again, that's going to be discussed in a minute. Florida Damage Assessment Survey, okay? And the SBA disaster loans, these are you can Google these anytime, you can find them easily. Now the SBDC, next slide, please. The SBDC is here to help. We actually have people that can help you, walk you through a modified or a maximum, if you need it, continuity or disaster preparedness plan, okay? You can follow us there, but more importantly, next slide. That's our website, sbdc.fau.edu, okay? You can go there, you can see our website, and you can schedule a one-on-one at no cost to you consulting session to help you with this and or any other thing that has to do with the growth and success of your business. Right? Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention. Back to you, Sandy.
Raphael, thank you, and thank you for the specifics of today. But as he also said, guys, there's so much more that they have to offer at FAU that you want to reach out, check out his website, and definitely take advantage of the consulting and the other technical assistance that can be provided. So Raphael, thank you again. So next up, our workforce development agency for the county, and I get to say that, our primary workforce development agency of the county need to get you to understand and get to know CareerSource Broward. So Doug, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys always. Appreciate Ms. Hilton, our CEO and president of CareerSource Broward. But take it away and share your information with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sandy. Appreciate that. So hello, everybody, and glad you're able to make this. This is a phenomenal opportunity, as you can see, just to learn about all the resources and all the work the county and Sand and his team put into it, but you have all the partners, FPL and FIU and all the others that are contributing to this whole thing. So we're glad to be a part of that. And what I'm going to share right now is how we can step in to assist when that time comes. And hopefully, we all wish and hope and dream it never happens, but it's probably inevitable at some point. So we brace, and like Rafael has said so well, and everyone I think has said so well, we need a plan. So go ahead and start the slides. My name is Doug Sines. I'm a business services manager with CareerSource Broward. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is outplacement services. That's really the driver here. In other words, how do you start recovering and getting back on your feet once the disaster or whatever it is, storm has hit? So go ahead, next slide. I'm going to skip through some of these. Go ahead and go to the one after that, if you could. Just want to tell you up front some of the things we can do for you at any time. Job postings, we can recruit talent for you. We can do candidate pre-screenings, and we have all kinds of tools for you. Next slide, please. That includes labor market information, economic data, and we do all kinds of, if you see the bottom bullet there, work-based training grants. Now that's, and next slide, please. That's where we can definitely help you save money, and that we have 4 different kinds: paid internships, incumbent worker training, and then on-the-job training. The 4th one isn't listed here. It's actually summer youth program. Think about that when times are great and we're out of hurricane season and things are, actually you can also think of it during hurricane season, of course, but those are ways we can save you money as you onboard new talent. But let's talk about the other side of the coin now. So next slide. What happens when something that storm is coming, or even if things get kind of start taking a turn for the worse? You heard Rafael say about the economic injury grant. Well, maybe the storm didn't even harm your business at all physically, but for whatever reason, supply lines, maybe half the highways are wiped out, airports closed, you can't get your product in, you can't do anything to help your clients. So now you're facing, okay, this is kind of the end of the road for me right now. Next slide, please. What can we do to step in? Well, there's a couple of options. Generally, what happens when bad times come, you're thinking, I have to lay people off now. You have to, depending on the size of your business, and there are regular, probably if you have to, you'd know if you have to submit a WARN notice that says I'm laying off X number of employees within 60 days. And then we automatically reach out to you. CareerSource Broward will automatically reach out to you. If you do not need, if you're not required by law to fill out a WARN notice and notify the government that you're laying off people within 60 days, you can contact us directly, okay? And how can we step in to help you? Well, here are some options. Instead of just saying, okay, everybody, goodbye, you're laid off. Next slide, please. And this is the option. It's called Short Time Compensation Program. And the whole goal of this is to avoid a total layoff, okay? So it's voluntary, and you would actually go in and apply online for this. You can go to the next slide, please. You're going to go in, complete the application. It's good for 1 year. So it's not like every time something happens, you got to go fill out a new one. No, it lasts you for the full year. The goal here is at least 10% of your workforce or of a certain department must work reduced hours. Okay, they can't work less than 24 hours a week. So if you're getting the picture here, the goal is, instead of just laying people off, reduce their hours on your end as the employer. Okay, what we will do is we will step in and we can arrange for the employees that are on reduced hours to pick up the difference. We picked up through the reemployment program. We used to be called unemployment. Now they call it reemployment. That's what will pick up the difference there. And next slide, please. Well, that was slow. Not you, and it was the slide was slow. Sorry about that. Okay, so you, I'm sorry, not you, the employees will get a partial prorated reemployment check that'll supplement your reduced paycheck to them because now they're on reduced hours. Now, this is only for full-time employees, so they must be full-time normally for them to be a part of this. The short-time compensation program won't cover part-time employees, okay? But it allows you to retain your workforce. And a real benefit there is it promotes some goodwill. With all the lockdowns that we've had with COVID and all, one of the biggest issues that happened, particularly in certain industries, I work a lot with hospitality. It happened with them, is there were just these instant layoffs, and it really left a real bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And certain industries and companies have really suffered for it. You have to build up the goodwill all over again. Well, this is one way to keep that goodwill, because they're all going to understand it's been a disaster, there's been a problem, things aren't looking too good. But it's a way to keep the goodwill, keep your staff there, reduced hours, and then the reemployment assistance can help supplement their paycheck or what you pay them. And next slide, please. You actually do this, in case someone was asking, through the Department of Revenue login. That's where you would go. You would fill out the application. And like I said, it's for full-time employees working between 32 and 40 hours and not part-timers. But it's a phenomenal resource for businesses. Again, stay afloat, keep your staff, create the goodwill, and then hopefully soon, especially the rate of speed FPL works and gets things up and running again. Hopefully, you can be back to a working normal. Maybe the economics aren't quite there yet, but you'll be back to a working normal, and then you can continue your business. Next slide, please. Okay, this is kind of more, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, there's also an added step we do too. And this is where we target the actual folks that you're going to be either reducing their hours or in a worst case scenario, because sometimes that's going to happen. You may have to just lay off everybody if it's been a real disaster for you. Next slide. Beg your pardon. So we can actually help with your employees and letting them know about different resources available to them. One, through us. We actually have three centers in the county. We can help folks look for work. We do have workshops. A lot of times people have been working for years, 10, 15 years. And well, funny as it may sound, they don't know how to do a resume anymore. They haven't had to make one because they've been employed for so long. Well, we can help come in and help them to do resumes. We have workshops on all kinds of aspects of interviewing and whatnot. So we also fill them in with resources that are available. And these can be really helpful in times when you have disasters that have struck, whether it's reemployment assistance, Florida Kid Care or insurance credit counseling during times when you may not be able to pay your bills because there's no money coming in, okay? And other resources that are available right here in Broward County to help your employees get through this time. Next slide. And all this, again, has to do with if they're going to get the reemployment, or as they say here, formally unemployment. There are certain things that affect it. We can help kind of educate on those issues, how does severance tie in, and what are the requirements if you're going to continue getting a reemployment check, those kind of things. But all this is services we can provide your business and then your employees as we go through those difficult times that sometimes happen when businesses have to either slow down, reduce hours, or sometimes even lay off. Next slide, please. And just like everyone else, well, you can continue. I've kind of already said all this, so next slide, please. You can find this all over social media. In fact, I work right next door to my colleague who does all this. And if you go to the next slide, I believe the next slide is my contact information. Oh, well, you can scan this to go to our training services page if you want to pull out your phone and scan that QR code. And then if you would like my information, go ahead and go to the next slide. Bonnie Smith is my colleague. She is actually kind of our WARN and what they call rapid response expert. So you can contact her or me, either of us, and we'll definitely get back with you if you're going to have questions and you need to know, okay, now what do I do? Or how can I help my employees? Or what can I do to get assistance from a career source? So please reach out and don't hesitate. But hopefully I won't have to hear from you this season. Thank you so much, Sandy. I turn it back to you.
Hey, Doug, and thank you again. And yeah, hopefully we won't have to reach out to you pertaining this during the season. But again, gang, there's so many business opportunities, so many supportive opportunities, so many HR opportunities, and so many financial resources potentially for you and your business through CareerSource. So definitely check them out. So next, I had a chance to meet this gentleman about a week or so ago. And again, I can say he is certainly one who believes in boots on the ground. He, along with his partners and other members of DEO, FEMA eventually, SBDC, Career Source Miami, as well as our own Career Source Broward, was here to assist us as we came out of the rain and the flood, and was here to make sure that they not only saw eye to eye what our challenges were, but was here to provide real support and guidance. So I want to thank Mason for that. It was a pleasure to get to meet him, but I want to introduce you guys to Mason Alford, the director of the Office of Small and Minority Business Capital from the Florida DEO. Mason, thank you for joining us today, sir. The floor is yours. But no, genuinely, just want to thank you for what you did for us. A couple of weeks ago while you were here, I shared with the audience that you are definitely someone, though I just met you, I can certainly say you are boots on the ground. You and your team from DEO and eventually FEMA, as well as SBDC and Career Source Broward and Career Source Miami, was here to assure that the business community understood that you were not only here to assess, but to offer support where possible. So again, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for all that you do. And now the floor is yours to share more with our business community, who you are, what's going on, and what's happening in the Office of DEO when it comes to us getting ready to go into this season. The mic is yours if you're not muted.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if I'm on video or not, but certainly appreciate the warm introduction, Sandy. And what I'm going to be going over this afternoon is going to be a little bit of a repeat of what Mr. McDonald went over. I'm going to go over kind of the state level emergency support function 18. And then I'm going to go through some of the resources that the department in my office has available for you as small business owners. But before I really get into that, I would just like to say, you know, it is a partnership that, again, we've got Career Source, the SBDC, DEO, Broward County, Florida, right? All of these partners, they each do something unique, and without all of us working in concert and coordination together, we really wouldn't have an understanding about the issues or things that are going on. And so obviously the business damage assessments are extremely critical for allowing us and leadership to understand what's going on. But again, we've got resources not only during emergencies, but during blue skies as well. So with that being said, could we go to the next slide, please? Next one, please. So I'm going to go through the emergency support function 18 at the state level. And again, it is aligned very similar to what Sandy had mentioned at the local level. But it's really important for us at the state level in the Emergency Operations Center to have relevant stakeholders, including other state agencies and other industry organizations. And you're going to see how the local coordination along with the state coordination assists kind of that federal FEMA response, SBA response, whatever that's kind of needed. But there's a lot of different players, including the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, Division of Emergency Management, and
Did I lose Mason's voice?
yeah, did you lose me for a little bit?
Yeah, just for a little bit, the last about 15 seconds.
Okay, and so really, if you we've got our state agency partners, but it's also our industry partners as well that are key to this. Florida Restaurant Lodging Association and the Florida Retail Federation. If you go back to Sandy's presentation and kind of that organizational structure that they had, it's a very similar kind of thing. He's the ESF 18 point at the Broward County level, and there's the hospitality and retail side, and then the business support function on the other. And really it's taking those local resources, aligning them in a much of the same manner that the state EOC is, because again, everyone's got different levels of situational awareness, different resources that they have available. And it's about aligning what we have available to respond to those incidents. And so if we can go to the next slide, please. The ESF 18's objectives, again, as we go through some of these other partners that have presented, actionable economic recovery plans, business continuity planning resources, those are key, right? Use your SBDC partner at FAU, schedule that consultation, get that information together before a disaster occurs, right? As, again, as Raphael had mentioned earlier, right? Not only verifying who you are and what your business is important, but in the emergency bridge loan program, right, there's tax documents, there are things that we are required to have before we can issue that bridge loan, and having all of that documentation together when, you know, your papers haven't gotten swept away in a flood or a hurricane are extremely important, right? We've got the floridadisaster.biz website. That is where you can find resources before, during, and after a disaster, right? That's where the business damage assessments are located. You can also get a link to not only FEMA resources, but to the emergency bridge loan if it's activated, which it is currently activated in response to the flooding that's occurred. We can go to the next slide, please. ESF 18 works, right? You can see how those arrows go off in both directions, right? We receive information from the locals, from Broward County. That comes into us, which we share not only with the larger state network, but the private sector and federal as well. It's really coordinating the information, understanding and assessing what is there, and then gathering the resources that we can provide for a response. And again, it's every activation, every disaster is different, and really having strong support at the local and state level allow us to coordinate better with FEMA, right? So we can go to the next slide, please. Right, so local ESF 18 teams are the subject matter experts that provide critical information to the state about their area. As Sandy mentioned earlier, you know, I was down there, I was deployed down last week. I spent, you know, the better part of a week down there meeting not only with Sandy and his group, but other partners that are in the area and impacted small businesses. And that's important, right? Because that allows me to share the true nature of what's going on. You know, it's hard to really understand impacts when you're getting blurbs or snippets on the news. Having those local experts on the ground that understand what's going on is critical for us to be able to know what is appropriate in order to respond, right? Next slide, please. And so our ESF 18 website, as I stated earlier, is floridadisaster.biz. That's the virtual business emergency operations center. It was designed and does a pretty good job of providing the latest disaster information to you as the business community. Those resources that are there, they're currently there. You can find information about them at floridadisaster.biz. And I've got, if we want to go to the next slide, I know we're holding the Q&As for the end, but I did not prepare any kind of additional slides or information about the emergency bridge loan, but it is available. It is active right now. If your business has been impacted by the Broward flood event, you can go to floridajobs.org/EBL. That is where you will apply. That is where you will find out the required documentation. That is where we have our frequently asked questions. And that is also where we have our application guide that will help you through that process. I'm happy, I'll put my direct contact information in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone has access to that, but if not, Sandy, could you please share that with everyone?
Thank you, Mason, and we certainly will. But yes, everyone has access to the chat, but we certainly will make sure that your information is posted, but we'll also make sure it's posted as we had the last week or so on our website. And we really do appreciate you in the state for all that you've done, all that you will do. And again, we do agree that it is about the relationship and the partnership. So thanks again. So gang, we are getting ready to go into Q&A because again, we wanted to make sure we can entertain any questions. We had a few in the chat that was answered, but if you have a question, Vanetta has a way of making sure we can get your question and pose it to me or any of the other presenters. This is the survey time. At the same time, You can take that little picture and hit that QR code, and you'll be able to tell us about this workshop. We also want to start making sure we have a better understanding and a better feel for the different type of things and information that you guys want to hear about when we do all of our workshops, not just this Get Ready. But certainly we want you to recognize it is that season. It is our time. It's our job every year to get ready, and as best as possible for us as the state, as all of our county partners, to help you get ready, be ready, and certainly, if needed, help you to recover. That is why we're here. We did this workshop about 2 weeks ago for the municipalities, well attended. That was a face-to-face, and we're now doing this one for the business community directly. And again, this one will be posted on our website, so this information will be available for anyone who was unable to catch this today. This will be on our website no later than Monday of next week. Vanetta, you got any questions for us?
Hi, everyone. First off, my apologies, Mason, for not seeing you earlier. Right now, we do not have any questions in the Q&A area. I will ask Pam if there were any that were put into the chat area by mistake. I think there was one that might have gotten transferred already, but we'll just do another cursory review.
Yes, good afternoon. Crystal had a question for the group, and Tracy was good enough to answer it. She was just looking for a list of community disaster resources, and Tracy pointed her to, and this is in the chat, and it was also responded to in the Q&A. And I'm in the wrong place, but yes, it's at risk. It's the at risk website is where you can find those resources that she was looking for. I'm looking for my answer here as I'm saying that. Answered, here we go. Yeah, Tracy, so it's www.broward.org/at-risk to look for community disaster resources to assist a disaster-related emergency, including special needs registry and materials that describe plans for evacuation and sheltering in place, as well as information for nurse registry patients.
Great. I'm glad Tracy was able to answer that. So I'm going to thank all my presenters again, because I often say when you have a series with multiple presenters and you have an audience like the one we had, you get 3 questions or less, that's called an A+. So here we go, information that was given, and that means it was well received. And again, that means they'll also still have access to all of our PowerPoints on our website. So we want to thank you guys for that. Again, you also can stay engaged with our office. Take that snapshot, and this leads you to making sure that you get our Wednesday night newsletter. That's all things Broward County's Office of Economic and Small Business Development. We try not to flood your email with a bunch of stuff, but once a week around Wednesday evening, you can get the email that tells you so much more about what we're doing, what we're planning, and how we can be a resource or of assistance to you as a small business or an aspiring entrepreneur right here in Broward County. Next slide. And we also want to talk about a little bit of our upcoming events. We're going to be doing some things in terms of continuing to work with our entrepreneurs. We do half-day workshops. We're going to be moving forward towards our full workshop with our entrepreneurs. We have an event coming up on June 12th as well at the South Regional Broward College Library. We want you to begin to register and have an understanding that entrepreneurship, that aspiration, that dream, or someone who tasted that cake who said, oh my God, you need to become a baker, all of that can become reality if you choose to use us or any of our other partners to help you launch your business. And again, we also do half-day workshops that if you are an existing business and you want to take a snapshot to see exactly how you're doing based on when you started, based on where you want to be 5 or 10 years from now, we also have something called Listening to Your Business. But coming up, we're going to get ready to prepare ourselves to work with our entrepreneurs who want to launch the business. Next slide. Save the date. This is where if you are a business right here, right now, we do a reverse trade show every year. And this is the chance, especially for my smallest of small businesses. This is your chance to get in front of our CABs, county agency buyers. This is where they'll tell you the kind of stuff they're looking for. But the majority of that afternoon, you get to tell them what good material, service, or product you provide. You get to get a better understanding of how they procure. And again, you're going to meet the actual CABs, the actual folks on behalf of county agencies, organizations, and offices who have to buy. You want to know who they are. Yes, there's much that we do. 50, 100, 200, 300,000, 5 million, 20 million and above that are always centered around procurement, online applications, bids, competitive bids, RFPs. That's still true. But guys, there's just as much that we buy as a county for 7,200, 15,000, 22,000, 38,000. For our CABs, there's something like $20 million of different good materials and services they buy, and we try to push them to using our smallest of small businesses. So this is a chance, based on your good material, service, or product, to get in front of CABs, to make sure you understand their buying process. See, sometimes they just get informal bids, which is notify 7 or 8, that's in the directory, and take quotes. Based on response and responsibility via the quote and the pricing, they make awards. We monitor those as well because we want to make sure as an office, small businesses are engaged. So that's what this reverse trade show is. That's coming up May 19th. Next slide. And once a year, we do a conference. And we don't brag about it, but we do brag about it. There will be over 700 small businesses. And that's inclusive of some medium size, and I always have some large primes to come. 700 plus businesses, let me put it that way, will be in the room for one day for us to put in front of them industry experts, other organizations, some that you heard from today, other community partners, resources, access to capital. This is about the Broward and Beyond Business Conference. And this year we have a special guest who's going to be our luncheon keynote speaker. It'll be more of a fireside chat. Our own vice president over at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Nikki Mohan, would lead us through this. But Miss Aisha Bowe has a story to tell. And just for sound bites, you're talking about someone who got the bachelor's, got the master's, went to NASA, became a rocket scientist, and thought that's where she would be for the rest of her life, until her mentor encouraged her to consider becoming an entrepreneur. 5 business launches later, now the next young lady prepared to fly on Blue Origin into space. That's our luncheon keynote speaker. So if you're available, if you're free, or if you know of other businesses who want to know under one roof, one day, where can I get access to resources, contacts, and find things that will help me grow, start, or scale my business? That's the Broward and Beyond Business Conference, June 2nd, Signature Grand. We'll be there from about 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Next slide. And with that, I thank all of our presenters again. A special shout out and thank you to Mason for joining us today on behalf of the state. We really appreciate it. And more importantly, we appreciate the relationship and the partnership. To my regular partners, I thank you every time for coming to our aid and truly being what our community needs, especially our business community, to have the support and the resources that they need, not only during this season, but throughout the year. So guys, I want to thank you all. Again, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you and be safe. We'll see you through the season. Hopefully we'll all be successful and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks again.